Welcome to Dyno-Pod, the Dyno-Rod podcast, where each episode we meet members of our Dyno-Rod team and broader partners. And on today's episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Jordan Wylie. Welcome to the show, Jordan.
Thanks for having me, Lee. Great to see you. Great to be here, and great to be part of the Dyno-Rod family.
Yeah, excellent. And yeah, that's a nice lead in. But before we get there, I guess it'd be good for our listeners just to get to know a little bit about Jordan Wylie. So for our listeners, Jordan Wylie MBE, for those that have watched Hunted, as my wife did, and was a fond fan of the Hunters. But I won't say whether she was a fond fan of you or not, Jordan. But that'll be disclosing, wouldn't it? So yeah. So I guess who is Jordan Wylie, the MBE, and what's your background on your journey to becoming an MBE?
Yeah, no, well, thanks for having me on the podcast, and also for all the incredible support from yourself and the whole Dyno-Rod community. It's been amazing. But yeah, so how have I ended up here? Well, I'm from Blackpool originally, from that dodgy northern accent you can probably hear. I'm from Lancashire, and I joined the army at 16 years old. If the truth be told, I didn't do too well at school. I wasn't great in the classroom, and really struggled there. And to be very honest, I was probably up to too much no good when I was a teenager. And it was probably joining the army that really set me up on this path that continue on now in life, where you get to travel the world, you get to learn a lot about life. But I think the biggest thing I learned from my 10 years in the army, in a tank regiment, a cavalry regiment, so like as a frontline soldier, if you like, was probably the values and important things like respect, integrity, loyalty, discipline,
Yeah.
courage, selfless commitment, all those things. And they're things that I've used over the last 15 years as an adventurer. And put me in really good stead, helped shape who I am today. And yeah, I've been for the last, yeah, certainly decade and a half, I've been going around the world, trying to take on challenges, trying to hopefully in some way try and inspire young people, whether they be in schools, cadets, scouts, Duke of Edinburgh Award students, and just trying to have a positive impact on the world. I think really is what drives me these days. I think when I left the army, I found it quite challenging adapting to the civilian world. It's a very different sort of place and operating environment, and I lost that sense of purpose. But to come back and do the little bits on the television, is good fun. I'm not someone who's hugely into sort of celebrity culture by any means, but I like that the TV shows and the bits I do on TV give me a little bit of profile to help hopefully do some good in the world. And that's why it's been amazing partnering with Dyno-Rod this year on that same mission of trying to give back to the communities that you guys serve so well.
Yeah, and I think we'll come back to that, the Dyno-Rod and what your plans are for 2025 because they are exciting. I guess a couple of things for me there. I guess in terms of your journey, right? I think there's probably lots of people that can resonate with a journey of, yeah, I didn't really like school, didn't do too well in school, didn't know what I was going to do in my life, blah 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 blah. And I'm probably one of them if I'm being honest, right? I'm not too dissimilar, but maybe somebody will podcast me one day. I don't know. Um, but yeah, I guess there's the word comes up a lot about transitioning to to the civilian world, I think is the word that gets used. I guess, how did you transition? Because it is a big change because you're in a mindset of being in, not that I've ever been in the army or the forces, but there's a mindset that you are just trained to do this, how you do it, what you do, when you do, and it's all about discipline. And then coming into a completely different world, that transition must be really, really tough.
Yeah, I think there are pros and cons. I think there are lots of great benefits, of coming out of the army. Of course, you're a bit of a free spirit. The world's your oyster, so to speak. Nobody's telling you where you've got to be, what you've got to do,
Yeah.
what you've got to wear. So that's one of the exciting sides to it. But I think what you certainly what I found difficult to find in civvy street or civilian life would be, when you're a soldier, you have a real sense of purpose in the world. You're on a bit of a mission. You know that your job is to try and hopefully protect people, serve your country. You're
Yeah.
very proud to wear your medals, your uniform and those sorts of things. And then you probably take it for granted, hopefully not speaking out of turn, but when you're in the military, it's a bit of a pain in the backside having to polish your kit and iron your clothes every day. But soon as that's taken away from you, you actually, in a weird way, start to miss it, and you
Uh,
only realize that it's like you don't know what you've got till it's gone, sort of thing. And all of a sudden, my favorite days of the year are things like Remembrance Day and regimental reunions because I get to have a bit of a taste of that magic that I lost all those years ago. Uh,
yeah.
I look forward to those days now. Whereas when you're a serviceman or servicewoman, them days are like, oh, that's just pulling boots and making sure my kit's all pristine. But they're special days these days. I think when you leave the army, you're a bit lost. I think some people are. I certainly was. You don't know what path you're going to go on. You're trying to sort of figure the world out, especially when you joined. I joined at 16, so even leaving the army, it was like I'd never really paid a bill. I've never had to do anything. Someone always fed me. Someone was doing all.
Yeah.
You're in a system where everything's taken care of, and that's one of the great things about the military. You've got 3 meals a day. You've got a roof over your head. You get paid reasonably well for someone with no qualifications anyway, and
Yeah.
it was you have that routine as well and that discipline where structure in your life where you know what you've got to do, you know when you've got to do it, and then all of a sudden you're sort of lost in this civilian world, and it's like where do I go from here? And I think a lot of people struggle with that, and for me, I took a few years to adjust, and it definitely played with my mental health and well-being as well, trying to adjust that. I was quite, to be honest, I was quite depressed. I got sort of diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and my mental health really deteriorated. And of course, when you're a soldier as well, as certainly as a frontline soldier, you get to experience a lot of hardships in many ways. You see a lot of things that probably most people wouldn't see in their life. When you're putting friends, colleagues, heroes in body bags in places like Iraq or Afghanistan. You go out on a patrol with someone who you've been sharing a tent with for 6 months, and then they don't come back off that patrol, and they don't get to go home and see their family again. I think those sorts of things that they have to affect you as much as you can try and block them out and try and sort of crack on with life. Those experiences definitely shape you, but I think for me, I've tried to use those what would be negative experiences, challenges. I've tried to use them in some weird roundabout way as that they've helped me grow as a person. They've helped me, value life more. They've helped me live life sort of like I don't know that tomorrow's going to be here. Sort of live in
Yeah.
the moment and being prepared to take a chance or a risk and not being scared of that. I think we often we often live in very comfortable lives where we don't really push ourselves as much as we probably could do. I think everybody out there is probably operating at least half 50% of what they could achieve if they really wanted to. But we're in this bubble of safety and security, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I think the military taught me to step out of that now and again because that's where the magic happens, the growth happens, we evolve, and almost like I think there's a lot to be said about embracing discomfort, because we learn so much in those hardship times.
Yeah, indeed. And being comfortable in an uncomfortable situation is quite hard for people. And that is a skill, believe it or not. And it is a skill being comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And you've got to think differently, you've got to act differently. But yeah, you've obviously been through that so many times with your services and in Afghanistan and places like that. I can only, as I would, tip my hat to anybody that's done what you've done, and the thousands that have done it for years and years and years, and will no doubt continue to do it for years and years. It takes a certain type of person with a certain mentality to want to do that, and I'll put my hands up. It's definitely not for me. But I will firstly be the first person to tip my hat to anybody that has, you know,
Yeah, but I
gone on
don't I don't
their
think as well though.
journey.
Like when you're 16, I don't think certainly I didn't anyway. You don't really know what you're getting yourself in for. I don't think So I don't think I thought like, oh, this is for me. I want to go and fight. I want to go and get shot at and things. I think you just
Yeah,
don't really know it. I think certainly when there's a lot of places in the UK, especially, and Dyno-Rod will know just as well as me that there's a lot of areas in places like where I'm from in Blackpool in the north, Liverpool, Manchester, where you're from, South Wales, London suburbs, where there aren't many opportunities for people, for young people. And it's like sometimes you've got to get out of the situation you're in because I know that certainly where I was in Blackpool, a lot of the people I associated with, and some of them were friends as well, that they were going down the wrong path, and some continued for the rest of their lives down the wrong path. And for me, it was like I needed to take myself out of that because I was
Yeah,
at 14, 15, I was so close to crime, drugs, things that people shouldn't be doing, just from by default of the people in the area where I was, and I
yeah,
needed to get out of that. And I think if you end up down that path, it's a slippery slope, and it's one that it's difficult to crawl back from. So for me, it was more of a case of trying to escape that kind of life that I could see myself being sucked
yeah.
into, and because I didn't have any qualifications at the time, your options are very limited, aren't they?
Yeah,
Um,
indeed. Yeah.
uh,
I
you
guess at 16, it's you have no fear really at 16 either. So it's the fear of the unknown that ultimately is heading into the I don't know what I don't know, so I'm just
Yeah,
gonna crack on and
exactly. Yeah,
hope
you
you got
already
me
know
get
what you
stuck in.
know.
Yeah, yeah,
And you're
yeah. Yeah,
naive as well, aren't you? You're sort of wet
yeah.
between the ears. You haven't got a clue what's going on.
Yeah, indeed. No, very good, very good. Okay, I guess we talked a little bit about your journey, and obviously now you are an author, celebrity, MBE, an explorer. I guess what does an average day or an average week in the life of an explorer and an author and a TV personality look like? It must be pretty hectic.
Well, I certainly don't consider myself as a celebrity. I think, people give you that label, and society gives you that label, but, because you work on television or whatever. But for me, most of my days, I'm either trying to train to get fit, because I always say I'm an adventurer. I'm not an athlete. I love a pint and a pizza at the end of a week, like most people. So I try to keep myself in good shape. I spend a lot of time in schools, probably most of my days in and nights even with cadets and scouts and things. For example, yesterday I was in two schools talking about my latest expedition, trying to use adventure to inspire young people. Last night I was at a scout show in Basingstoke in Hampshire, giving a little talk after a performance to scouts. So for me, I found a lot of purpose and passion in trying to help young people. That's a big part of my life. I think when you're trying to do major expeditions, these things cost a lot of money. They can cost hundreds of thousands of pounds. So I find myself as a bit of a marketeer in many ways. I'm trying to sell myself, my projects, my adventures to the rest of the world, and hopefully convince people that they should come on this journey with me.
Yeah,
It's not always easy. You have to bang on a lot of doors that don't always open. I feel the life of a salesman in any world. It's tough. And especially when you're not giving them a physical product or anything for their money.
yeah,
It's not an easy sell sometimes, and you have to find people who are like-minded, who have got similar values, and a lot of people, unless you're giving them something, we live in a world, I think, where everything's a quick fix. Everyone wants instant gratification, and to find people who want to play the long game is not that easy. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, talking to the media as well, doing lots of interviews, things like podcasts, because you're always trying to raise awareness of whatever you're doing, both from a corporate side sponsorship, but also for me, it's about having an impact. So the charity side, I've just this morning spent an hour and a half on the phone or on the Zoom calls to the charity who we're supporting this year, the Army Cadet Charitable Trust, just seeing how we
yeah,
can be more creative, more exposure for the projects we're doing, but also sort of saying to the charities, as I was this morning, like if we've got big sponsors and partners who want to support this, we've got to be engaging with them as best as possible. If they're taking a chance on us and making us their chosen charity or making us their chosen adventure, we got to be
yeah,
giving as much back, if not more, to them to say to show them how grateful we are, but also to help them support us and make that process easy. So lots of talking, networking, lots of coffees, and lots of going to do exercise. If anyone's seen me recently, I'll have been pulling a tyre around Hampshire. You get some funny looks, really funny looks when you're pulling a big truck or tractor tyre around the streets. That's something. But what I have learned on this, I've never been someone who's been pulling tyres around the streets before, but what I've learned is actually it's a real good conversation starter because every person you walk past wants to know what the hell you're doing. So I've now carry a load of business cards with the QR sponsorship donation page on, and then I just said, check us out. This is what we're doing, and that's been
Yeah.
quite good fun actually.
Yeah, very good. And I'm going to come on to the Antarctic Odyssey in a second because this is your latest expedition, which we'll come on to in a second. But what other adventures have you done over the last sort of few years?
Yeah, lots of adventures. I think, I think adventure for me, it's like it's not about necessarily going to the other side of the world like Antarctica or the North Pole or anything. It's like I always think of adventure. It's like a mindset. It's like a way of life, a way of living. It's like wanting to get the best out of every day. It's like taking a chance. It's doing something you haven't done before or making yourself in an uncomfortable situation to see where it takes you. And I've done lots of good fun projects from running marathons in the most dangerous places on earth. So my first ever marathon was the marathon of Afghanistan actually in 2018, and I'd never run a
Oh,
marathon before, and I don't necessarily really enjoy running marathons, but I know that they keep me fit and they keep me sane and they're good for my mental well-being. But for anyone listening, actually, what I found out in the Afghanistan marathon is that because lots of people sign up to the marathons like the London or the Cardiff or whatever, and they're quite often hard to get into, especially the London marathon because it's all balloted.
yeah.
But if anyone's listening and they fancy doing their first marathon, there's always places in the Afghanistan marathon available. You will never not have a place there. And I realised that when I got my bib number through and I was number 3 in Afghanistan. It's
Wow.
it's not a place where people are queuing up to go and run a marathon, funny enough.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely not on the big 6 or 7 as they call it. People do,
Yeah.
don't they? In New York and various places and what have you. Yeah, okay. Maybe one day. Maybe one
Maybe
day.
one day, maybe one
Maybe one
day.
day.
But
Okay,
yeah,
good.
climbing mountains, I love climbing mountains, but I always try to do things a little bit differently because I'm doing it with a charitable sort of cause behind it. So to get good donations or good sponsors these days, you've normally got to do something that's not been done before or try something that's maybe a little bit riskier. Because what happens is when you do things that have been done before, it's very difficult to get the media coverage or the exposure. But when you take a bigger risk, you go to somewhere that's not been reached or you try something new, then people are interested. The public engagement is a lot higher. So
Yeah.
for example, a few years ago, well, about 10 years ago now, maybe a bit longer, a friend of mine was going to Africa to raise funds for a cancer charity because his mum had sadly been affected by cancer. And he said to me, he said, Jordan, I want to climb Kilimanjaro. Me and one of the lads are going from the military. Do you fancy coming with us? And I said, I'd love to come. It sounds a great adventure. I said, but if we're going to raise it for charity, we need to do something a little bit different because, hundreds of people every year climb Kilimanjaro. How are we going to be stand out from this sort of crowded marketplace, if you like? And I said to him, why don't we do it with no shoes on? And we'll do it and we'll call it something like Barefoot Warrior. And, we'll get lots of engagement. And as you can imagine, my two friends who I went with, they thought it was the most ridiculous, bonkers idea going. They said, why the hell would we want to climb a mountain with no shoes on? It's just crazy. But very kindly they said that if you want to do it, we'll support you. We'll go at your pace, sort of thing, and go a bit slower. So we did it, and it was really a real life lesson in fundraising for me because all I did was exactly the same as what they did, but I didn't have any shoes on, and my fundraising went to like £70,000 plus, and both of their pages went to like £700 or under £1,000, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I realized that you don't have to be the best. I'm not the best at anything. I'm not the fittest. I'm not the fastest. I'm not super at anything that I do. But
Yeah.
the ability to think outside the box, to think differently, all of a sudden got lots of traction. Social media, the mainstream media. All of a sudden, it's quite quirky, and people want to take notice. And so
Yeah.
I realized that. So a lot of my projects, things like running dangerously, running through the most dangerous countries in the world, or rowing dangerously, rowing the most dangerous stretch of water on the planet. Last year I did Tower Power, which was an eco triathlon. So I was trying to get from the Leaning Tower of Pisa to the Eiffel Tower to Blackpool Tower, which is where I'm originally from. And the project was called Tower Power, the Ultimate Eco Triathlon. So I wanted to get from tower to tower in the most sustainable way possible. So we made a bike out of coppice wood from the local forest. Um, our tent was a fully recycled tent. We ate vegan, plant-based food. I'm not a vegan or anything, but we basically was trying to see if we can give more back to the planet than we could take through an
Okay.
adventure. Yeah, we paddled across the English Channel in a boat made from plastic Coca-Cola bottles that kids had collected for us, which again is
Wow.
absolutely bonkers, but it got the engagement in terms of,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
support media charity. So I'm always just trying to think a bit differently. And also what's going to engage children. For kids running a marathon, it's running, it's a long time running, it's quite boring.
Yeah.
But if you're running a marathon, in somewhere like, I don't know, Antarctica or Greenland or somewhere where there's reindeers or,
Yeah.
penguins, it's all of a sudden it brings it to life for children in schools and things.
Yeah. So yeah, okay, that's quite a nice lead in actually, because thinking differently, I guess. So where did the idea of the Antarctic Odyssey come about, and why are you doing it?
Well, most importantly, we're doing it for the Army Cadet Charitable Trust, which is a charity that focuses on helping young people access life-changing opportunities. So it uses things like the outdoors and adventure. For those children out there who might come from challenging backgrounds, had a tough start in life, or not doing too great at school, it uses the outdoors and adventure to really provide opportunities that will hopefully change their life, see them grow and evolve into good, decent young citizens in society. Um, so that's who we're raising the money for. And again, going back to, I guess, what we were saying earlier, it's like, what can I do that's going to engage an audience for a good cause? And there aren't many places left on the planet that have not been explored. So I needed to find something that was going to challenge me in terms of physical resilience. I was going to have to push the boundaries of what I'm trying to achieve and get
Yeah.
super fit. And I needed somewhere that was untouched, but also somewhere that I could use in schools and education. And I thought going to the polar regions and going to Antarctica, which is a really vulnerable part of the world because of the climate change issues that we're facing, that was a good hook into the education system by going there, because they need to know, the next generation needs to learn about sustainability, about climate change, about the impact it's having on the planet and the world. And
Yeah.
then I needed to think of something I could do in Antarctica, and not to disrespect anyone who's done anything in Antarctica, but lots of people have done lots of things. Not lots of people, but lots of adventurers have been to Antarctica, whether it's doing things like marathons that I've done or doing skiing to the South Pole. So I needed to find something in Antarctica that was different, that nobody had done before. And there are lots of unsummited, unclimbed, unnamed, unexplored peaks, so mountains in Antarctica that no one has ever stepped foot on before. So I thought this was an interesting opportunity to be able to fundraise, but also gain enough traction and interest from media outlets,
Yeah.
both social media, online, mainstream media. And I pitched it to a few sort of media outlets before I went and said, "What do you think to this?" And they loved it. They said it's brilliant because you ultimately this is it's proper exploration in terms of you going into the unknown. You don't know what you're going to find, so nobody can tell you how hard or how easy or what you're going to see or anything else, because nobody's done it and nobody's been there. And that's what really is really inviting for me as an adventurer, as an explorer, is to go to somewhere that nobody's been, and to hopefully summit at least one, maybe more pristine peaks that we can say, we did that as a team, and amazing support, and we've sort of pioneered in many ways
Yeah.
in this field of exploration.
Yeah, indeed. And again, it's that pushing the boundaries and doing something that no, that's the exciting bit for you. And what's coming across is just doing something that nobody else has done, like no shoes, walking up Kilimanjaro, going to somewhere in the Antarctic where nobody else has been. I want to be the first, which, takes a lot of courage. And I guess it takes a lot of planning, which we'll come on to in a second. But I just wanted to ask a couple of questions there. You talked about supporting children. How many young people do you reach through the ACCT across the UK? Is it tens of thousands, a couple of
Yeah,
hundred?
Yeah, tens of thousands. It's the Army Cadets and the Army Cadet Charitable Trust. Um, they're one of the cadets are one of the biggest youth organizations in the country. And sort of contrary to popular belief, they're not like a recruiting channel for the military. They're a youth organization that happens to be sponsored by the MOD, which means that they wear a uniform and they use a similar structure in terms of how we train them. We're not training kids with guns to go and fight or anything. We're using military style syllabuses that help develop things like teamwork, communication, leadership skills, and also inject a little bit of discipline, introduce them to things like discipline, which is something that a lot of young people struggle with, especially in this day and age with the distractions of like social media. Most
Yeah,
a lot of kids these days, when I speak to them, they're glued to screens, whether it's an iPhone, an iPad, and they're literally living their lives through a little screen. So it's trying to get them off those sorts of devices and do things that we would have done as kids, camping, climbing a trees,
yeah,
and crossing a river or whatever it might be, things that we've
yeah,
become very adverse to these days for whatever reasons. And so yeah, there's 140,000 in the army cadet in the cadet forces, and the cadet forces are actually bigger than the British Army, believe it or not, which is incredible, really.
wow,
It's a sizable organization, and for me, it's probably the nation's best kept secret because it does so much good and provides so many, as I say, life-changing opportunities. I
yeah,
think we have a duty to the next generation to try and help them and help them sort of get a good start in life and get on the straight and narrow. And I don't think, personally, I don't think it matters what background you've come from, what your social status is. I think that if you've got the right attitude in life, regardless of experience, regardless of what school or qualifications you've got, most people will give you a chance, won't they? If you've got a positive attitude and you want to learn and you want to do well. And the Army Cadets, for me, it's an organisation that it's developing good citizens to enter society into adulthood. And as I say, there's no barriers to being a cadet. All walks of life, all backgrounds, all races,
yeah,
sexes, colours, creeds, whatever. Anyone can be a cadet, and we're all the same when we put on that uniform. We're all
yeah,
part of the same family, and
yeah.
it gives a real sense of belonging, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and you talked there about sort of teamwork, leadership, problem solving, that camaraderie, and they're all transferable skills that people can take into the workplace as well. Whatever they decide to do in life, there'll be lots of transferable skills that will set them up for, give them a good foundation and a good basis. Because it'd be interesting. I don't know whether you probably know this, but what proportion of that 140,000 actually go on to the military? Because I think there's probably a myth or a perception out there that, oh, they will all go and become a soldier or in the forces somewhere. But it's so, but based on what you're saying, that's far from the truth.
Yeah, definitely. Certainly, it would be a minority as opposed to a majority. And the last time I was briefed, I think the figures were something, around maybe like 10, 12, 15%.
Yeah, okay.
But a lot of them will probably have come from military families where their fathers, mothers, grandfathers, whatever,
Yeah,
have served and been inspired that way. But we're from our perspective as the cadets, we're like, there's no obligation. We're not interested. Whatever you want to do, whether you're going to want to go and have a career in the military, whether you want to go and be an engineer with Dyno-Rod, whether you want to, go and be a postman, and whatever it is you can do.
yeah,
We
yeah,
we just want to give you life skills that are going to help you on that journey. There's absolutely no pressure and nobody, and a lot of the adults that are teaching the cadets, the majority of those are not coming from military backgrounds. Of course, there are some because people like me, we want to give back and we want to help, but most of those volunteers are coming from normal jobs in from all walks of life,
yeah,
and giving their time voluntarily. And it's important to mention them because actually they're the sort of the lifeblood of the organization, those adult volunteers,
yeah,
that deliver their weekly sessions, their weekends away, their summer camps, all completely free of charge. They're not getting paid, and some people would, in society would say that when you've got 2 weeks off in August, who wants to be going sat on Salisbury Plain in digging a trench,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
you've got to have huge respect for these people.
Yeah, yeah, and how many locations are there across the UK? Because I know there's one quite local to me, and I'm sure there's plenty of them across the country.
Yeah, there's more than 1,700 detachments in the UK. So
Wow.
they're literally pretty much, in every town, village. It's often the sort of, one of the great tragedies, and I guess my role as the national ambassador is to change, is that not enough people still know about them. You know, they see these sort of like little wooden huts now here on like, on an estate somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's like, what goes on with there? We just see these people in uniforms creeping in on a Tuesday night, and it's
yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's more like we've got to shout about it, and that's why for me, working with a national, credible brand like Dyno-Rod is amazing because the reach that will give an organization like the Army Cadets is brilliant because for me, Dyno-Rod was an amazing partner and is an amazing partner because you are very similar to the cadets. You're embedded in all our communities across the country. Where whatever town or city you're in, within 60 minutes, I'm pretty sure there's probably a Dyno-Rod engineer or franchise or whatever on
yeah, indeed.
standby that can get to you within an hour or two.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, we've got 1,100 engineers across the UK, across plumbing and drains, and yeah, they will be dotted in postcodes, probably not too far away from a cadet outlet location in the UK. So yeah, there's definitely lots of synergies, and I have no doubt there are probably lots of people in our network who have got an army or a military or a cadet background as well.
Oh,
So
definitely. And I've come
yeah,
across some already, even in the cadets, I've come across a handful of guys who are engineers who work for Dyno-Rod and one of the franchises, and they're also Cadet Force adult volunteers. There's, a couple of them have reached out, which is amazing.
yeah, that's good.
Probably
Yeah.
there's a lot more as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. No, that's really good. That's really good. And I guess why Dyno-Rod? What attracted you to Dyno-Rod and vice versa, I guess. But yeah,
Well, I'll tell you what, Lee, we're going from the sewers to the summit, aren't we? So
we certainly are going from the sewers to the summit. Yeah, indeed.
So, do you know what I love? Probably two main reasons with a Dyno-Rod. One, from the most important one, is from a values perspective in terms of what you're about as a brand, your brand values, who you are, what you stand for, what you're trying to achieve. I think there's so many synergies in terms of in a bit of a triangular way, what Dyno-Rod's trying to do, what the Army Cadets are trying to do, and what I'm trying to promote and push. I think we're massively aligned in terms of, giving back key issues like mental well-being in the workplace, sustainability, helping the next generation. We're so aligned in what we want to push and promote and encourage in our networks, both for engineers, for cadets, and so on. But also, I love the concept. Dyno-Rod are an organization that go and do jobs and go to places that a lot of people won't want to do. And they
Yeah,
have the skills to do those things that a lot of people can't do. And I love the synergies that has with an extreme adventure, because a lot of people won't go to Antarctica, can't go, and probably wouldn't want to go and climb a mountain and be freezing for weeks on end. And I just
yeah,
love the crossover between the links. I think it's a perfect fit. And we get I'm very lucky that I get the opportunity to work with great companies, but with Dyno-Rod especially, I don't just say this because I'm talking on your podcast. I say this to everybody. You're one of the most engaging brands that I've ever worked with in terms of you wanting not only to support me, but on the charity side, that the work that you've already done in the short space of time of working together, going above and beyond. It was highlighted by the CEO of the charity this morning that they've never seen partners that are going so far above and beyond to try and help a cause. It's really commendable, and I guess for me, it's just trying to spread that through the Dyno-Rod network even further. Um,
yeah.
across the country.
Yeah, indeed. That's the continuation and that continuous improvement of working in partnership and yeah, yeah, it's a headline sponsor, but it's more than that. It's a partnership. It's about how can we help you? How can you help us? And more importantly now, how can we spread that word far and wide across our 1,100 engineers and the 700 support staff that run Dyno-Rod as an entity to really bring alive and support what you're trying to achieve, not just from an Antarctic Odyssey perspective, but from a charitable perspective as well. So yeah, it's exciting times, I have to say, really exciting times. We're at a very, we're only in the first couple of months, but we've done an awful lot of great things so far, and there's lots of great things that we can be doing over the next 12 months as well, which that's the exciting bit, I guess. So yeah, not really
Oh,
good.
and just yeah, just a huge, thank you to yourself and the team. But anybody who has supported, we get lots of great comments on Dyno-Rod's social media, lots of support staff engineers who've reached out, and want to be involved. And so anybody in the Dyno-Rod network, just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart because it's you guys that are enabling this to go on this journey to be able to make a difference to so many young lives. So huge respect and gratitude to all of you.
Yeah, no, that's appreciated, and I'm sure everybody in Dana will appreciate it. And I do see lots of thumbs up and likes and shares and comments. So yeah, it's gathering momentum. We just got to keep challenging ourselves to get that momentum building even more from a small snowball to a big one
Absolutely.
that you'll be wrestling on the Antarctic in later on this year. So coming on to that actually, onto the adventure and the challenge. So what's involved now from where we are today? We're obviously at an early stage of 2025, but what's the plan now for this year from a training perspective, and who are your support teams and raising awareness, etc.
Yeah, so the plan for me now is, I'm sort of just doing my sort of general fitness at the moment, going to the gym, pulling my tire around, trying to get in better shape, and also with these things, it's like getting time on your feet as well. Spending a lot of time on your feet. So doing a lot of things like 10K, starting a half marathons, and I'll probably, do some marathons, doing some hiking, carrying weights and things. And then next month is a big month because in March I'm going to be heading to Sweden to do some extreme sort of polar weather, cold climate training. So learning and harnessing the skills and building on skills with some former Royal Marine Mountain leaders from the polar environment, some Arctic leaders. They're going to be teaching me, how to survive in those extreme weather conditions, how to look after myself, how to cook, how to camp, how to get best efficiency out of pulling my pulk, as it's called, like the sled, if you
Yeah,
like. Um,
yeah,
so learning all those skills as well, which is really important because, when you're in the coldest, windiest, highest and driest continent on Earth, it's not like you've got a helicopter that's just going to come and pick you up if something goes wrong on the side of a mountain or
yeah,
something. You literally got
yeah,
to survive and sustain for, you're going into an extremely hostile environment. So you have to be prepared as best as possible. And I'll be using the expertise of anybody. I'm just a bit of a sponge for knowledge of people who work in these environments at the moment. Um,
yeah,
and the same on the climbing side, because the expedition itself it's a multi-discipline polar expedition in the sense that before I climb one of these unclimbed, unsummited peaks, I've actually got to ski with all my kit to get to them first, which might take, a week, it might take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it takes. So I've got to not only sort of get used to pulling weight on the ice and camping every night to get to the mountain. And then I've got to learn, whatever technical skills I need to climb the mountain. Because I'm not someone who's done I've done plenty of climbing, but certainly not in extreme cold, icy climates.
yeah.
Going up the Black Mountains in your part of the world or the Brecons is very different than going up, ice. No, well, actually, you probably get quite a lot of snow and ice down there
Ah,
in the
yeah,
Brecons.
yeah. The Brecon Beacons do, yeah, absolutely. That's a regular visit for
Yeah,
military is
it's
the
a bit of a
Brecon
playground
Beacons.
for training for the army.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, it sends a shiver down my spine when I hear those words, Brecon Beacons, in the military capacity.
Yeah, indeed. I will confess, I just drive through the Brecon Beacons. I have been saying to myself that one day I need to just go and experience that Pen y
Yeah,
Fan walk, and
definitely.
maybe I'll put that on my
I think
list
that should
this
be on
year.
your bucket list before the end of the year. I think that's what
Yeah,
support you need to give us. You need to get
I
up
will.
there.
Yeah, I'll pick a nice sunny morning in the middle of June, and I will be
Well, you
up there
get you get
cracking
four
dawn.
as you know better than me in that part of the world, you get all 4 seasons in a sunny morning. And
Yeah, you're not wrong there. You're not wrong there. And I get back to your point there about having to ski for potentially a week or 2 weeks and then do the sort of the extreme climb at the end to reach the summit. Will you be going solo for all or part of the journey, or is there
so
someone
it's
with
an
you?
interesting question. So to go into that part of the world and to go to somewhere that's not been explored before, which is sort of uncharted territory, under polar regulations and under the Antarctic Treaty, you have to have a polar expert with you. So a climbing partner, someone who's going to come with me, someone who's got the knowledge of because you're going to be going across glaciers and things like that, where death and destruction can be one bad decision away. So I'll certainly be with one person who will be working with me, and that is not by necessarily choice; it's by necessity and legality under the Antarctic Treaty and the regulations that are stipulated to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be allowed to go, as I only learned quite recently. So The great thing for me as well, though, is it means I've got someone who can capture the journey with videography and cameras, so we can tell the story to anyone following, and when we get back and what have you.
Yeah.
So there are added benefits, not just from a risk perspective, but from a PR branding.
Yeah. And I guess look, and I don't just want this to be about Dyno-Rod, so it'd be good to hear about who are your other support teams and sponsors as well, because it's quite a big team that's wrapped around supporting you on this through 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, these things can't happen without amazing support. I'm the very lucky one who gets. Some might say unlucky, but I'm the one who gets to go do the adventure. So I'm very privileged that, and I don't take that for granted. But I can only do that because of amazing supports. Obviously, with Dyno-Rod as a headline partner, but then some of the other companies that have got behind it, like Bremont Watches, the Birchman Group. Lots of people giving me things like kit and equipment. We've also got the 500 Club, which is amazing. The 500 Club is a sort of exclusive club that I set up for this project, where um, anyone who wants to donate £500, whether you're an individual, a business, a charity, a school, a college, whatever, you donate £500 direct to the charity via my fundraising link. And then I send you an exclusive Antarctic Odyssey limited edition coin, which has got the expedition logo on one side and the Dyno-Rod and Act UK logo on the other. There's
Yeah.
only 100 of them to go out. And then we also put your logos and things on our website, give you shout outs on social media. So it's, as you say, it's a huge team effort. For me, it doesn't matter who you are in the world. If you've ever done anything great or adventurous, or done anything that's going to be a bit of a game changer, it relies on a big team of people.
Yeah.
As I say, I'm the lucky one who's getting to go and do it, but I can't do any of what I'm doing without the amazing people like yourselves and the other brands that are involved.
Yeah, and like I said, it is a big team effort just to raise that awareness and drive the donations for the charity. So, any listeners out there, You'll hear a lot about the Antarctic Odyssey this year. So there's some great opportunities to be part of the fantastic journey and the fantastic expedition that Jordan's doing with everyone else that's supporting him. So dig
Yeah,
deep,
and if there's
put
any
your
of the
hands in your
franchise
pockets.
Yeah, if there's any of the franchisees, franchise owners who've got any ideas and they want to run their own little event locally in their network, their town or anything, reach out to me, and if I'm available, I will come and support it. I will get involved, come and do a talk or anything I can help with. Anything that I can help with on the Dyno-Rod side. If people want to do
Yeah.
their own fundraising, just give me a shout or reach out to me.
Yeah, indeed. No, I think that's part of for me that continuing the momentum that we've got now. It's right. How can we take that national Dyno-Rod brand to that local level using the Antarctic Odyssey with a local franchise with yourself present, and I'm sure there's lots of weird and wonderful things that we could come up with and do together over the course of the
Yeah,
next 12
definitely.
months, which is the exciting bit again for me. I guess. If I think about the world that you've I'm going to use the word grown up in, having joined the army at 16 or the forces at 16, etc. And a lot of that will be, some times where you'll be working remotely and we're working alone. And I guess from a Dyno-Rod perspective, like I said earlier, we've got 1,100 engineers out there where they are pretty much working alone. Yes, they'll visit customers' properties, but they are working alone. What is your sort of how what would be your advice from a mental health well-being, just taking care of yourself when you are working on your own? Because it can be a lonely place sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point, and it's certainly that's an issue that I'm passionate about. Trying to support people with mental well-being and mental health and things, and being completely transparent and honest. It's something that I've struggled with a lot over the years, and still take medication for today for depression and anxiety. I take a drug called sertraline every day to help me. And life can be tough. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do. Life can be really tough sometimes, and it can throw you curveballs. Whether it's in the workplace, whether it's changes in the job, the environment, whether it's at home with loved ones, business, relationships breaking down. We're all on our own little journeys, and things can change rapidly sometimes, and it can really throw our mental well-being. So I think for me, especially for lone workers, we have to have in the military we call it a buddy system. We have somebody who's looking out for us. Might not be with us every day, but just checking in on us. It might just be a text, it might be a phone call, it might be a little message on WhatsApp. Just making sure that if that everything's going to plan. And if you're having a bad day as well, having somebody in your life who you can talk to, who's not necessarily going to judge you. It's not you
Yeah,
know, it's really important. And I think the good companies out there like Dyno-Rod and many others, you want to provide a workplace where people feel that they can talk to someone if they've got an issue, somewhere that they can reach out to and just say, I'm having a bad day today. I don't know why. It doesn't have to be a reason why, because sometimes we have a bad day. I've had many days where I've had a little cry in my pillow sometimes, and I don't even know why, and that's where I realized I got an issue. Um, and I think for me, what do I do to manage my mental well-being as someone who works alone most of the time as well? I try and exercise. I try and keep moving. I think, and it doesn't have to be anything extreme. You don't have to be going for a run or anything or doing a 5 or 10K every day. Just going for a walk. Just going for a walk around, round to the local shop, taking your dog out in the field. I think that the benefits of being outside it's probably the best medicine that I've ever come across when you're feeling down or bad. Getting some good fresh air in the lungs and taking a
yeah,
stroll and getting a bit of clarity of thought in your mind, especially when things are building up and you're stressing and you've got all these worries. At the outdoors, I call it green therapy when you go out in the countryside and have a walk. Or if I go for I love going in I'm a bit strange because I go for swims in the local river and I get some funny looks, but I call it blue therapy. I go for a swim in the sea or the river. Um, so I think for me, the outdoors, exercise, are two big things. Talking to people about my problems, it's not a cliche. A problem shared is a problem halved, and all that good
yeah,
stuff.
indeed.
Really important. Um, I've always been someone who writes things down as well. But, I was diagnosed with ADHD a bit ago, and for me, I like to write my thoughts down on paper because my brain is a bit of a mishmash of so many different things and ideas. But when I write it down, things start to make sense and it gives me clarity. So some people call it journaling, some people it's just taking some notes, some people write diaries.
Yeah,
Some people think it's a bit strange and weird that I do that, but whatever it is that works for you, I think the
yeah,
key thing is you've got to find what works for you. Um, but yeah, because lone working it can be difficult because most of the time we live our lives in our own head, in our own mind, and we have conversations with ourselves. We talk to ourselves, and we go
yeah,
through lots of scenarios of what might happen, what might not happen, what might go wrong in our lives. So we want to make sure that I think also that whatever we're listening to or whatever we're watching, especially with social media, I always think that when we spend half our lives these days on our phones scrolling through things, we want to make sure that whatever we're putting into our brain is something positive. And I think that is reflected in like what podcasts we listen to, what news channels we watch, what the people we surround ourselves with in our personal lives. We want to make sure that that energy coming into our lives is all good, positive stuff. It's
yeah,
like when I'm following people on social media, I'm asking myself, am I inspired by this? Am I being educated? Am I being motivated? Or is it actually making me depressed, watching all these things,
yeah,
So I think we've got to really think about what information flow is coming into our lives. And
yeah,
because often, again, it goes back to that we're sort of a product of our environments and whatever we surround ourselves with, we sort of become, don't we? So we want to
yeah.
make sure that's something positive and good, I think.
Yeah, indeed. No, I think there's some good messages in there. I think it's the key one for me is it has to be the right release valves for you as an individual because what works for me might not work for you, Jordan, and vice
Yeah.
versa, and will not work for everybody. But there might be some things here that people think, actually, I used to go for a walk or I used to do this and I've stopped doing it. I want maybe I
Yeah.
need to start
And you
doing those
never feel
things.
worse. Like if you go and I always think, I'm not whatever people might think as an adventurer, I'm not somebody who wakes up in the morning and goes, I can't wait to go to the gym or I can't wait to run a marathon. I'm never that person. I have
Yeah,
to really drag myself to these places. But what I would say is when you've been for a walk or you've been for an exercise or whatever it is outside, you never ever feel worse at the end of it than what you did before it. You might not be enjoying it while you're doing it if you're tired, if
aye.
you're running, but you feel better when you've done it 100% every time.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I concur with that 100%. Yeah, it's oh, the alarm's gone off. Shall I snooze one more time and or shall I get up? And then you get up, you go and do your hour and a bit, and you think, oh, have a shower, and you think, feel much better now. I'm ready
Yeah,
for the day now. I'm ready for the day. So
I
yeah,
definitely.
no, it's very very true. So you just touched on it there. You're not somebody that jumps out of bed in the morning, but apart from obviously your time as being a hunter, what does get you out of bed in the morning?
Well, I'm a bit of a morning person, which my missus is, probably doesn't like because she loves a lion and I'm one of them people who sort of wears out throughout the day. So when I get to bed, I'm quite early normally and I'm quite tired, but I jump up with energy and not that I want to be running to a gym or anything, but I'm ready to tackle the day. So I think for me, normally, because I'm going into a school or something, I have huge respect for teachers just on that note, but to get up every day in front of 30, 40 kids or whatever in a classroom or assembly and to maintain that motivation is it's so difficult.
Yeah,
Especially when other people are relying on that energy to inspire them. And I think one of the things that I learned in the military that I use every day and that's really a trait or a value that is overlooked in all aspects of life is discipline. I think discipline is like something that we all need a little bit more of sometimes because we discipline is like as humans we can't be motivated every day.
no,
It's impossible. It doesn't matter whoever you are, the superstar, whatever. You're an athlete, adventurer, you're a CEO of a business, you're an engineer on a job. There'll be days when you wake up and you think, I cannot be bothered putting on my Dyno-Rod top today and going to fix whatever it is. That's
yeah,
normal. But what discipline is about still doing what needs to be done, even on the days when you don't
yeah,
feel like it. And I think that's such an important character trait because it comes from building routine into your life as well, I think, because then discipline becomes second nature. And
yeah,
also I think as discipline is something that's quite freeing and liberating because if you do what needs to be done, you sort of you have more time, you have more freedom to go and do all the things that you want to do.
yeah,
So it's a great trait, I think, and a great value discipline that the military, uses to the extreme. Because most
yeah.
people think of discipline like when I talk to kids about discipline, they think of it as somebody shouting at you, somebody telling you,
Being told off.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But actually, it's a great trait that can be used in a very positive way. I feel.
Yeah, no, it's a useful tip. Discipline isn't just about being told off. It's about, yeah, you're doing things in a certain way for a reason and there's an end game to it. But yeah, it's bizarre. But no, very good, very good. I guess look, I'm gonna give you the last moment shortly. But look, I just want to say thanks very much. That's been really, really insightful to learn a lot about you as an individual, our partnership with Dyno-Rod, your up and coming Antarctic Odyssey expedition. But it sounds, everything is going to be really exciting, and and the team are genuinely behind you. And we've got an exciting 2025 ahead. So I guess I'm going to hand back to you for a second. How can our listeners help? So people who are listening to this and we share it, what can they do to really help the Antarctic Odyssey?
No, well, again, thank you to everyone who's supported or is listening or is in the Dyno-Rod family. Absolutely exceptional support so far, and we're just warming up together for a big year ahead. But yeah, spread the word. I think that's the biggest thing. Tell people about it. Get involved. Sometimes, of course, we're trying to raise funds and things, but half of that battle is people knowing about what we're trying to do. So anything, even with the Dyno-Rod posts that we're putting out on socials, if you can comment, if you can share, that is just as helpful as making a donation. All those things.
Yeah.
It's one big team effort. Not everyone's in a position to be able to donate £5 or £10 or whatever, and I appreciate that. It's cost of living times are tough sometimes, but if you can share the message and tell some five friends about it, that is just as valuable to us. But anyone who's supported in any way, you're making a huge difference to young people's lives. You're inspiring the next generation, and it's an absolute privilege to fly the Dyno-Rod flag everywhere I'm going. And hopefully, in 12 months from now, I'm going to be planting that in a position on top of a mountain that no one else has ever stepped before, which
Yeah.
would be incredible.
Indeed. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. So no, thank you, Jordan. Fantastic. Thanks, Jordan, for being our guest today.
No, thank you so much for having me. Absolute privilege.
And to you at home, thanks for joining me on Dyno-Pod, and see you soon for more.